I'm looking at in your article again, their argument is that the Internet has become a powerful and dependent form of communications that is dangerous and inequitable for one nation to control and manage. That, as a former Intel guy, that sentence in itself sounds like it doesn't even make any sense.
It's totalitarian.
I mean, what are they saying? Because it's a good resource, the people shouldn't have it?
Well, they forget that it was paid for, and it was created by two Americans under a government grant. So it belongs to the people of the United States, not to the House or the Senate or the executive branch or some foreigner.
Right. Well, that's the other thing.
And the foreigners want to put in their own rules, like you can't talk about women who don't wear a veil because everybody should have a veil. I mean, this is how crazy it's going to get.
Well, how, under their plan, what would they do? Have cultural hubs? So if you're in the Middle East, you would be routed through one hub where there would be a different restrictions on content than, say, in the Western? I'm not really, or would they just, you're saying they would control everything, just unilaterally across the board?
Unilaterally. They'll go for it. The two fellows who created the Internet in the early 70s were Dr. Robert Kahn and Dr. Vinton Cerf. And you don't hear about them anymore, but they were the ones that made it happen. And the key, of course, is the domain names, which are managed by IANA, the Internet Assigned Numbers Authority. They want to break that up.
Is that a private? You're saying that's a private?
That's private, yes. That's privately owned.
And did they get a contract for for supplying? I mean, is it licensed?
No, the government just allowed them to create that.
So now, I heard in the past about Internet 1 and 2. The original plan was, to try and migrate everyone to Internet 2? Is that still on the drawing board?
Well, I haven't heard much about it, quite frankly, but the answer to your question is yes, that Internet 2 is on tap, and Google probably is trying to do that with their idea of having an alternative Internet. And, of course, Google was made to look good recently by the Chinese because they were defying the Chinese about content.
Yeah, well, you don't believe that, do you?
No, not at all. But it's propaganda because they want an alternative source so that will start the ball rolling to take control of the Internet away from the United States. They want to control people completely. And the way that they're going to do that, in this instance, is not let anybody talk about the things that we're talking about right now.
Well, I have a lot of faith that you mentioned earlier. Just 2 or 3 years ago, there was a lot more buzz about, like you said, licensing people, getting a business license if you wanted to get a domain name. And a lot of that, I think, has been squashed because of people like yourself. And we're speaking with Bob Chapman of the International Forecaster. You can get his great publication that comes out twice a week, I believe on Wednesdays and Saturdays, at theInternationalForecaster.com. Did I say it right this time or not?
Right, and the Forecaster is FORECASTER.com, and it's about 40 pages each week, each issue. So it's 80 pages a week, approximately, by email. We have a hard copy for those who are not on the Internet, and that comes out twice a month. And we only give out current copies. A lot of these newsletters give you something 3 months old. We don't do that. If you call me today, you get today's issue.
Okay, well, when we come back...
Or if you email me. And also we have a toll-free number, and you can call in, particularly for those of you not on the Internet, and get a free copy, a hard copy.
Bob, hold the number. Bob, hold the number. Can you hold it?
375-4188.
Hey, Bob, we got to run to break. So when we get back, you can give the number with Bob Chapman, International Forecaster, and we're going to get into what's really going on with Greece and the economy here. So hold on till after the break, Bob. We'll be back in a minute. This is Mike and Jeff, keeping it real.
I'm Vicky Carmona with your Las Vegas area traffic.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society.
All right, Bob, you there. Did you hear that famous JFK speech, which I'm sure you've listened to many, many times?
I sure did. I know the family very well.
That's right. Sometime when you're on, we'll have to tell some of the personal stories you know. You know, when I first got into this, what do you want to call it, journey down the rabbit hole of connecting all these dots, I had, of course, the wrong impression of JFK. What do you think about JFK overall? You think he kind of figured things out as he got into his presidency?
Well, first of all, he figured them out because his father told him about them. His father was right in the middle of it on Wall Street. He knew what he was dealing with. He knew all about the Illuminati. And he played the game and played it hard. And they did not like him, but they respected him. And they tried during the 1930s. You know, he was the first commissioner of the Securities Exchange Commission, and he held that post for a couple of years, maybe 3. And he had his brokerage firm working, and they get into some sort of problem, and to get him off the hook, his partner took the blame. His partner was named Donnelly. He was my grandfather's brother.
Huh, had no idea.
Yeah, my mother's side of the family are Donnellys, and my father's side are Chapmans, although that's misleading because my father's family came from Italy. So I'm Irish-Italian, typical Boston. And anyway, Dad, Joe, was the one who knew what was going on, and he told his son Joe, who got killed during the war, and Jack. And Jack got wounded, as you know. And so that's how Jack found out about who was really running things. And at first, I didn't think that he was for real.
Right.
I thought that the agenda was not what it should have been. And I was wrong. And as it turns out, he had the whole thing together and was ready to act on it, and that's why they killed him.
No doubt about it. Maybe sometime we'll get you on with somebody else. We could talk more about that. By the way, you hear a lot of disinformation on the, I think it was an executive order he was going to issue for the currency. Was he actually going to issue backed money again or not?
Yes, U.S. notes.
And people say that's still on the books. It was never taken off. Has anyone ever been able to find that? Is it in the archives?
I don't know. I can't answer that question, but he also wanted to do away with the CIA and
true.
The Federal Reserve.
He wanted to break it up, and I forget the quote he used, but he was very outspoken. It's amazing when obviously he must have been told, he was an insider, that he had to know what was going to come. I tried to get into his head and figure out what he thought, how he was going to insulate himself from what came. But apparently, I would just encourage everyone to look into him. My views on him has changed over the years. He was obviously very brave. Probably the last person, wouldn't you say, that's actually stood up, at least in...
Well, there's no question. He was a typical Boston Fighting Irish, if you may. Take nothing away from the Fighting 69th, which was a New York outfit, which I was in when I was in basic training at Fort Dix, New Jersey, back in the early 1950s. And when I left there, of course, your patch changed, and I went to SHAEF out of Paris. And so I wore the SHAEF patch for a few years when I was in counterintelligence, although I seldom wore a uniform. And but anyway,